Hi everyone, welcome back to Unit 4. In this first part of Lecture 10, we'll build on the foundation laid down in our previous discussion of the Stoic system, investigating some further key aspects of Stoic thought and how it contrasts with Epicureanism, the other influential school of Hellenistic philosophy we've studied. After recapping the central principles of the Stoics' approach to the good life, we'll turn to the teachings of Epictetus, a pivotal Stoic thinker who argues for a life of freedom that comes from focusing on what's up to us. We'll also explore in more detail the Stoic belief that virtue, seen as the capacity to judge wisely and to respond appropriately to impressions, is the only good in life. After this, we'll draw some key distinctions between the Epicurean approach to the good life and the Stoic approach. While both schools offer paths to human happiness, they differ significantly in their approaches to pleasure, pain, the power of reason, and the value of political engagement. Finally, we'll consider the Stoics' views on emotions. Stoicism often gets misrepresented as advocating for the suppression of emotions. However, as we'll see, a closer look at their theory reveals a more nuanced understanding, one that emphasizes the role of human judgment in both experiencing and managing our emotions. In our previous discussion of the Stoics, we examined their view that the good life, happiness, or eudaimonia, is achieved by living in agreement with nature, as claimed by Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism. Let's briefly recap the core ideas of this view. From the standpoint of physics, or the study of nature, Stoicism teaches us that while conventional goods, like wealth and pleasure, can sometimes lead us astray, virtue always benefits us and is the only thing that's unconditionally good for us. Nature thus directs us toward living a life that's virtuous. Turning to logic, the Stoics held that to align ourselves with nature, we must make sound judgments based on true impressions. We must act with knowledge, assenting only to impressions that are true, because the human power to deal with impressions, the mind or reason, is the only thing under our direct control. Thus, the good life for the Stoics requires attending to what we can control. Connecting physics with logic, we see the Stoic Sage as the embodiment of wisdom. Living in full agreement with nature, the sage acts with knowledge, responding well to impressions. This theory positions Stoicism as a radical form of virtue ethics, one where virtue is synonymous with wisdom, a cognitive state that lies in the capacity to judge and respond well to impressions. And Stoicism is radical not just in this sense, because it suggests all virtue is rooted in a form of correct judgment, but also because it claims that this cognitive state alone is enough for a good life. For more on this idea of virtue as a cognitive state, let's turn now to Epictetus, a thinker of key importance in Stoic philosophy. Epictetus' story is a remarkable one. Born into slavery in the 1st century CE, he endured the hardships and limitations that such a life imposed in the Roman world. During his life as a slave, however, Epictetus became exposed to philosophy, and specifically to Stoicism. It's likely that he was manumitted or set free by his owner, which was a common practice in Rome for slaves who developed a special skill. After gaining his freedom, Epictetus began teaching philosophy in Rome until the Emperor Domitian banished all philosophers from the city in around 93 CE, an order likely motivated by his suspicion of their influence and their independence of thought. Epictetus then relocated to Nicopolis in Greece, where he established his own school and continued to teach. He didn't write down his own philosophy. Instead, it was his pupil Arrian who compiled Epictetus' lectures and conversations into the text that we're studying in this unit, the Enchiridion, or Handbook, and the Discourses. These Stoic teachings attracted respect and admiration from across the social spectrum, from the dispossessed and disenfranchised to those at the highest levels of power. The impact of Epictetus' views grew to be so great that about 100 years after he lived, they influenced a new Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius, who often refers to Epictetus' ideas in his Meditations, a series of journal entries written to himself while on military campaign. Overall, Epictetus' life is a powerful demonstration of the Stoic belief that external conditions don't define us. For the Stoics, it's our judgments, our choices, and our use of reason that determine the quality of our lives. The 17th century depiction of Epictetus that you see here symbolizes his enduring influence as a Stoic thinker. Though he lived with a physical disability, represented in the image with his crutch, Epictetus never saw himself as broken. Instead, he focused on the strength of his mind, the one possession he claimed as his own, as a source of true freedom. We can see this notion of freedom as a cognitive state in the famous opening of Epictetus' Enchiridion. Let's examine this quote slowly and see how all of it hangs together to represent a Stoic approach to the good life. Some things in the world are up to us, Epictetus claims, while others are not. Up to us are our faculties of judgment, motivation, desire, and aversion. In short, everything that is our own doing. Not up to us are our body and property, our reputations and our official positions. In short, everything that is not our own doing. Moreover, the things up to us are naturally free, unimpeded, and unconstrained, while the things not up to us are powerless, servile, impeded, and not our own. Keep this in mind then. If you think things naturally servile are free, and that things not our own are ours, you will be frustrated, pained, and troubled, and you will find fault with gods and men. But if you think you own only what is yours, and that you do not own what is not yours, as you really don't, no one will ever put pressure on you. No one will impede you. You will not reproach anyone. You will not blame anyone. You will not do a single thing reluctantly. No one will harm you. You will have no enemy because nothing harmful will happen to you. Epictetus then continues, right now then make it your habit to tell every jarring thought or impression, you are just an appearance and in no way the real thing. Next, examine it and test it by these rules that you have. First and foremost, does it involve the things up to us or the things not up to us? And if it involves one of the things not up to us, have the following response to hand. Not my business. So what's Epictetus saying here? Well, in the first line of the passage, he immediately draws a distinction between some things being up to us and other things not being up to us. And he then itemizes things in each category. The first underlined terms here identify things that are up to us or under our direct control, our faculties of judgment, motivation, desire, and aversion. All of these things point to the inner resources and power of the mind, or our reason. These are the areas for the Stoics where we exercise our personal agency. When Epictetus then says, not up to us are our body and property, our reputations, and our official positions, he's delineating the external aspects of life that we may be able to influence to some degree, but which ultimately lie beyond our full control. These are outcomes in general, and all external goods, including other people. The phrase naturally free, unimpeded, and unconstrained emphasizes the inherent freedom we possess in our internal world, our thoughts and decisions, which cannot be controlled by external forces. If you think you own only what is yours, the quote continues, no one will ever put pressure on you. Here, Epictetus is urging us to redefine our sense of ownership, to focus only on what's truly ours, our will and our choices. And he says that when we do this, nothing can ever harm us, because the only thing that can truly harm us, according to the Stoics, is choosing badly or responding badly. The quote then concludes with practical guidance for dealing with impressions. Right now then, make it your habit to tell every jarring thought or impression, you are just an appearance, and in no way the real thing. And if one of these impressions or appearances involves something that's not up to us, we should be prepared to say, not my business, or this is nothing to me. What Epictetus is doing in this opening quote then is asking us to devote our efforts to what we can control, our minds, which includes our judgments and desires and reactions, and to maintain a clear distinction between these things and external events that we cannot control. It's not a call to inaction, but advice for intentional, effective action, ensuring that our peace of mind remain intact, regardless of the conditions we're in. As we noted in our last lecture, this idea of focusing on what we can and cannot control allows the Stoics to promote a specific kind of activism. Epictetus claims that the internal domain of our minds is where true freedom and our capacity for agency lie. By concentrating on this, he thinks we can maintain a calm and effective mental outlook in the face of challenges and other adverse events. Recognizing and accepting the limits of our influence over things allows us to respond to any misfortune with a clear state of mind and a resilient spirit. This acceptance, however, is not to be confused with passivity. Stoic philosophy instead urges us to use our capacity for action wisely and to engage in areas when we can make a difference. The first line of Niebuhr's Serenity Prayer echoes this sentiment, asking for serenity to accept what we cannot change, while Davis's words complement this Stoic stance by underscoring the importance of active engagement in matters of justice and ethical concern. Both perspectives align with the Stoic principle of distinguishing between what's up to us and what's not up to us. What's not up to us, such as how things turn out, the actions of others, or the larger tides of history, we learn to navigate with composure. What is up to us, particularly within ourselves and our immediate environment, we approach with agency and determination. We see this same determination reflected in another Stoic idea we discussed in our last lecture, the idea of turning obstacles into opportunities. The mind can adapt and alter every impediment to action to serve its purpose, according to Marcus Aurelius. Something that might have hindered a task contributes to it instead, and something that was an obstacle on the road helps you on your way. This quote again expresses the Stoics' belief in the power of the human mind to reframe experiences. It's not external events themselves that obstruct us, but how we perceive them. What's needed is a cognitive outlook that gets us to assess these events calmly and carry on, to view each obstacle not as a hindrance, but as a tool for growth. So we're now in a good position to compare the two Hellenistic schools of philosophy we're studying in this course, Epicureanism and Stoicism. First, let's consider their metaphysical views. Both schools assert a materialist view of the universe. However, they diverge sharply on the order that they see in nature. The Epicureans, as we observed in the last unit, see no inherent order in the world. They believed that the universe is composed of atoms moving in the void by chance, without divine intervention of any sort. In contrast, the Stoics believed that the cosmos is imbued with reason and purpose. In fact, they regarded God as a kind of cosmic rational order, a divine principle that pervades nature, suggesting that nature unfolds according to a providential plan. According to this view, natural events are in a deep sense fated, since they express a purpose or telos. Interestingly, the Stoics also held that this notion of fate and a deterministic universe is not incompatible or at odds with our capacity for free will. Moving next to ethics, the Epicureans advocate a hedonistic theory, promoting pleasure as the ultimate human good. However, as we've seen, this is an enlightened hedonism, where true pleasure lies in the absence of pain, not limitless indulgence. For the voice of nature's values, the Epicureans then look to the human infant, who's free from cultural conditioning and whose natural inclinations reflect this core hedonistic principle. In contrast, the Stoics ground their ethical system in virtue, equating virtue with wisdom, the power of choice, and the ability to respond well to life's impressions. In replying to the Epicureans, the Stoics then ask us to look again at the human infant. They argue that when we really observe an infant and what it has a natural affinity for, we see that it's not pleasure that the baby seeks, but self-preservation. Look at this infant here, desperately trying to crawl. The Stoics point out that this effort, though accompanied by strife and discomfort, shows how we're hardwired by nature to pursue our own preservation and self-growth. The infant seeks to crawl instinctually in trying to develop its own natural capacities. the experience of pain comes along with this growth, suggesting against Epicureanism that pain in itself is not a bad thing. For the Stoics, this inclination for self-growth extends beyond physical development to our socio-political development. We mature and flourish through social interaction, often enduring pain and other challenges to express our nature as rational and social beings. And this leads us finally to the political views of these two schools. The Epicureans were political minimalists. They generally advised a retreat from public life, favoring a life of quiet, private pleasures. Engaging in the tumultuous realm of politics on this view disturbs the tranquility that is essential for living well. The Stoics, however, promote a politically maximalist stance. They encourage active participation in civic life and see the social and political spheres as natural arenas for the practice of virtue. They believe that as social beings, it's part of our nature to engage in and contribute to a wider community, and that in doing this, we live in full agreement with nature. This is the logical extension of their cosmopolitan worldview, which sees all human beings as citizens of a single shared world. Seneca brings these distinctions between Epicureanism and Stoicism into sharp relief with a succinct observation. The difference here between the Epicurean and our own school is this, he says. Our wise man feels his troubles but overcomes them, while their wise man does not even feel them. Seneca's words underscore that for the Stoics, experiencing and overcoming adversity is essential to the development of wisdom. It's through this process that we not only prove our virtue, they believe, but also refine and reinforce it. This stands in contrast to the Epicurean goal of avoiding pain to secure a tranquil life. At this point, let's address what may be the most common criticism of Stoicism. The criticism is that the Stoics' approach to the good life is devoid of emotion and passion, and that we should deny or repress our feelings. But again, as with the criticism of Stoicism we noted in our last lecture, the story is more complicated. The Stoics are not against feelings in themselves. They think emotions are a natural and indeed even a necessary feature of human life. What they're against are what today we would call unhealthy emotions, like anger, fear, anxiety, and despair. The Stoics supported the cultivation of healthy emotions, and in fact they recommended a number of feelings and desires as part of living in agreement with nature. Their basic claim here is that all our emotions are the products of judgments we make. Emotions in this sense come infused with cognitive content. They contain beliefs about how the world is, particularly beliefs about things that are good and bad for us. Unhealthy emotions, on this view, are produced when we dwell on outcomes we believe are bad, outcomes that are not up to us, and when we're fixated on achieving things over which we have no control. For instance, fear can be paralyzing when we worry about failing to achieve a certain outcome, like getting a new job, or winning a match, or doing well on an exam. Likewise, we typically feel anger when we fail to get something we want that's out of our control. In each case, the Stoics believe the unhealthy emotion is the result of a faulty judgment about what's good or bad for us. But when we focus instead on what's up to us and what's truly good, our efforts in responding well to external events, then the Stoics think this should produce various positive emotions and desires. The take-home lesson here then is that faulty judgments lead to unhealthy emotions, while wise judgments lead to healthy emotions. The Stoics had three broad categories of feelings here that they identified as good or healthy emotions. The Greek term is opatheia. First, they think we should take joy or delight in what's truly good, which is one's own sound judgment in responding well to events, and in promoting the good of others. Second, they advise us to feel caution or discretion, which is sort of the Stoic counterpart to fear, by being on guard against responding badly to impressions. And third, they recommend that we should engage in a kind of wishing, or willing, directed at maintaining our good judgment in the face of future obstacles or temptations, which includes wishing for the well-being of others. Not only are these three categories of emotion encouraged for the Stoics, they're actually expected. So the ideal Stoic life, represented in the figure of the Stoic Sage, is not a cold fish. In recognizing the spectrum of human emotions, Stoicism also has something to say about reflex-like emotions. Consider here feelings caused by post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, where reactions can be intense, immediate, and often beyond the direct control of a person. The Stoics claim that while these reactions may be involuntary, we still have power in how we respond. We have the capacity to process and work through such emotions. Such involuntary actions require not just philosophical insight, but actively seeking out professional care. The Stoic approach here aligns with contemporary therapeutic practices that encourage patients to gently confront automatic reactions, to understand their origins, and to gradually learn how to respond to triggers in a healthier way. Stoicism advocates for a similar internal dialogue, a recognition that while certain emotional reactions may be automatic, the meaning we assign to these feelings remains up to us. We can choose whether to dwell on these reactions and decide not to have them define us. We can see this cognitivist framework for understanding and managing the emotions in the following quote from Epictetus on anxiety. He invites us here to examine the underpinnings of anxiety by reflecting on our desires and where they're directed. Whenever I see someone in a state of anxiety, Epictetus says, I ask myself, what is it that he wants? Unless he wanted something that was not up to him, why would he be anxious? The reason why a minstrel feels no anxiety when he's singing by himself at home, but does when he enters the theatre, even if he's an excellent singer and a talented player of the lyre, is that he doesn't just want to sing well, but also to go down well with the audience. And that isn't up to him. With this example of a singer who plays his instrument with ease when alone but becomes anxious before an audience, Epictetus makes a crucial Stoic point. Unhealthy emotions like anxiety often arise when we believe something's good for us, in the case of the singer, the applause of the audience and external validation, that's out of our control. Managing anxiety on this view is not about suppressing our emotions, but about understanding their origins and realigning our desires. By recentering our focus on our own virtues and efforts, factors that are truly up to us, we can address the root causes of anxiety, Epictetus believes, and confront life's uncertainties with composure and resolve. And so at last we have a full portrait of the Stoic Sage. Let's now summarize the defining characteristics of this ideal figure. First and foremost, the sage is wise, where wisdom is understood as a cognitive state that consists in judging and responding well to impressions, a practical skill that guides virtuous actions and decisions. Second, the sage is politically engaged and has concern for all humankind. This engagement is not limited by borders or personal affiliations. It includes a universal concern for the welfare of every human being, resonating with the Stoics' cosmopolitan ethics. Third, the sage wishes with reservation, turning obstacles into opportunities and focusing efforts on what can be controlled, instead of becoming occupied by the unpredictable outcomes of external events. Fourth, adversity does not hinder the sage, who handles challenging situations with equanimity. The sage keeps calm and carries on, embodying the Stoic virtues of endurance and determination in the face of misfortune. Fifth, the sage is emotionally healthy, experiencing emotions that are aligned with what's truly good and bad, based on a rational understanding of the world. In a nutshell, if there's a single word that describes the Stoic sage's outlook, I think it's unflappable. Undisturbed by the ebb and flow of fortune, the sage maintains their composure, demonstrating that it's not external events that trouble us, but our judgments about them. In embodying this state of mind, the Stoic sage illustrates the strength of will that comes from a life lived in agreement with nature. As we wrap up this first part of Lecture 10, let's review the key points we've covered in this video. We began by considering the Stoic notion of freedom as represented in Epictetus' advice that we focus on what's up to us, a freedom rooted not in external events or even in our actions, but in the internal outlook and perspective that we have in minding our impressions. We then explored some key distinctions between Stoicism and Epicureanism, the two prominent schools of Hellenistic philosophy that have been our focus in the last 2 units. We noted the divergent views between these schools in a variety of areas. While both the Epicureans and the Stoics uphold a materialist view of the universe, their interpretations of nature's guidance differ profoundly, with Stoicism advocating an intrinsic order and purpose in nature that's fated and teleological. Interestingly, both Epicureanism and Stoicism look to the human infant as a guide to nature's values. But where the Epicureans see in the infant the voice of nature's hedonistic call, the Stoics see a natural inclination towards self-growth and rational development. Our discussion next of Stoic emotions revealed a sophisticated cognitivist view, where emotions are fundamentally based in judgments that can be reshaped by attending to what's under our control. And finally, we summarize the outlook of the unflappable Stoic Sage, an embodiment of wisdom, emotional health, political engagement, and resilience, the ideal to which Stoics aspire in seeking to live in agreement with nature. In the second part of this lecture, which will conclude our study of Stoicism, we'll pick up on this notion of the sage as an ideal and explore how the journey toward wisdom for the Stoics is one of continual progress and striving, even in the face of our human limitations.